Throughout the epic saga of life on Earth, one truth has remained nearly constant. The waters that cover our planet conceal terrors far more nightmarish than anything that walks the land. From the modern depths to the prehistoric seas, this pattern has endured across eons. Yet there exists one brief, forgotten window in our planet's history before the age of dinosaurs, when everything we understand about safety was inverted. A time when to flee into the water meant to choose life, and to remain on land was to face almost certain doom. This anomaly in Earth's brutal timeline unfolded during the Lopingian epoch, the final chapter of the Permian period, spanning roughly 259 to 252 million years ago. To comprehend this world is to erase everything familiar about our planet. Time itself flowed differently. The moon orbited closer to Earth, compressing days to a mere 22 hours. The geography would disorient any modern observer. Most of Earth's landmass had coalesced into the supercontinent Pangaea, a monstrous fusion of Africa, the Americas, Antarctica, India, Australia, and parts of Europe. Only to the east could one find significant landmasses free from Pangaea's embrace. One northern island comprising present-day Siberia, Kazakhstan, and North China, and southward, another composed of South China and various regions of Southeast Asia. Turkey, Iran, and Tibet formed smaller islands, caught between the vast Tethys Ocean and the sprawling Paleo-Tethys. Yet these immense bodies of water paled in comparison to Panthalassa, the superocean. This colossal expanse of water covered over 60% of Earth's surface, dwarfing our modern Pacific Ocean twice over. An ocean so vast that its very existence defies comprehension, a watery void stretching beyond imagination. One might expect such enormous waters to harbor the most terrifying leviathans evolution could conjure. Yet strangely, these Permian seas were relatively tranquil compared to the horrors stalking the land. The oceans had been decimated by the Capitanian mass extinction event, a cataclysm more devastating than the famous event that would later claim the dinosaurs, yet one that history has largely forgotten. Marine life struggled in the aftermath of this apocalypse. The once mighty Helicoprion, the bizarre 26-foot shark with a spiral-toothed lower jaw that resembled a circular saw, had already vanished. Its relatives persisted but were modest by comparison. The largest sharks of the late Permian, the Caseodus species, reached merely 6.5 feet, comparable to a modern leopard shark and armed with teeth designed for crushing soft prey, not rending flesh from bone. Other shark species, the sphenacanthids and hybodontids, though diverse, rarely exceeded 3.3 feet in length. Even the eurypterids, the sea scorpions that had once been the ocean's apex killers, teetered on extinction's edge, their lineage never having recovered from an earlier catastrophe. Only 2 genera remained, neither large nor particularly threatening. Throughout these depleted waters swam the reduced remnants of once thriving ecosystems. Trilobites, ammonoids, cephalopods, all present but diminished in number, diversity, and scale. The oceans had become a refuge not through any inherent safety they offered, but through the relative absence of specialized killers. For on land, evolution had crafted something far more terrifying. The catastrophe that had devastated marine life had also ravaged terrestrial ecosystems, but unlike the oceans, life on land rebounded with frightening vigor. The extinction had eliminated the previous rulers, the Dinocephalians, a group of large-bodied therapsids that had dominated the early and middle Permian. Their disappearance created an ecological vacuum, one that would be filled by creatures of nightmare. Into this power void stepped the Gorgonopsids, predators so horrifying that when paleontologists first unearthed their remains in 1876, they named them after the Gorgons of Greek mythology, monsters whose gaze could turn flesh to stone. These were not mere predators, but perfect killing machines, among the first saber-toothed hunters to evolve on our planet. Their distinctive appearance would seem eerily familiar yet alien to modern eyes, superficially resembling saber-toothed cats like the much later Smilodon, but belonging to an entirely different evolutionary branch. They were therapsids, neither mammal nor reptile, but closer to mammals than to reptiles, distant relatives of our own lineage, yet utterly foreign. When they first appeared around 265 million years ago, gorgonopsids were modest creatures no larger than a human foot, hunting small reptiles and therapsids. But as the Middle Permian transitioned into the Late Permian, something extraordinary happened. With their larger competitors eliminated, they grew steadily larger with each new genus. What had begun as a minor predatory group exploded into an array of specialized killers that dominated every terrestrial ecosystem. From this evolutionary arms race emerged the ultimate nightmare, Inostrancevia. This was not merely the largest gorgonopsid, but the largest terrestrial predator of the Late Permian. The most exceptional specimens stretched beyond 11 feet in length and weighed over 1,000 pounds, comparable to a large bear, though average individuals more closely match the dimensions of modern tigers. What made Inostrancevia truly terrifying was not merely its size, but its specialization for killing. Its sturdy, elongated limbs granted it both durability and surprising speed, allowing it to outpace countless herbivores. Those unfortunate enough to be caught faced one of nature's most perfect killing mechanisms, curved, serrated canine teeth measuring 6 inches long, among the largest of any non-mammalian therapsid. These weapons slice through flesh with horrifying efficiency, causing catastrophic damage to vital organs and massive blood loss. Paleontologists debate whether Inostrancevia killed like the later Smilodon, dispatching prey with precision strikes to the throat, or employed a bite-and-retreat strategy, allowing shock and blood loss to claim its victims. Either fate would have been gruesome. Most terrifying of all, Inostrancevia achieved a vast range spanning parts of modern Africa, Asia, and European Russia, adapting to environments from warm floodplains in South Africa to frigid arid deserts in Russia, where life clung to thin forests of Peltis spermalis, the dominant flora of the Late Permian. Some researchers believe it may have even possessed fur to survive these cold regions, though this remains unconfirmed. But one apex predator, no matter how formidable, cannot alone transform an entire world. What made the Late Permian terrestrial ecosystem so lethal was that Inostrancevia was merely the most impressive member of an entire guild of specialized killers. Dozens of gorgonopsid species stalked both hemispheres, creating a world where herbivores of every size confronted specialized predators perfectly evolved to hunt them. European Russia hosted a particularly nightmarish assemblage, including the smaller Pravoslavlevia and medium-sized Suchogorgon alongside Inostrancevia. Yet even this paled in comparison to the horrors of South Africa, where an entire subfamily of giant gorgonopsids had independently evolved, the Rubiginae. While Inostrancevia claimed the title of largest individual gorgonopsid, the Rubiginae were on average the largest family, distinguished by robust skulls, frequent tooth replacement, and deeply serrated teeth potentially even more efficient at cutting than those of Inostrancevia. Among these southern killers, Rubigia atrox stood supreme, a 10-foot predator whose skull comprised over 15% of its total body length. This skull, with its bony protuberances, was built for grappling with powerful prey. Yet, like the much later Smilodon, Rubigia's bite force was surprisingly modest, only 20% stronger than a modern wolf. This merely demonstrates how perfectly evolved its teeth were, slicing through tough hide with minimal resistance. As if competing gorgonopsids weren't terror enough, the Late Permian harbored numerous other predatory groups. The Therocephalians, another therapsid lineage, had also diversified into predatory niches. Though superficially similar to gorgonopsids, they possessed broader skulls, smaller straight teeth, and more compact builds. Some Therocephalians developed unique hunting specializations with evidence suggesting certain species, like the dog-sized Eucambersia and Ichibicopsia, may have been venomous, potentially the first vertebrates to evolve this trait. Others, like the Ictiosuchids, adapted to semi-aquatic lifestyles, while some, like the Selacosauridae, evolved their own unusual saber teeth. Most notable among them was Moscherhinus, a jaguar-sized predator with a disproportionately large lion-sized head, equipped with sharp conical teeth. Fossil records reveal Moscorhinus was among the most abundant therocephalians during this period and one of the few non-gorgonopsids to achieve apex predator status. Even larger was Megaweitzia, a 9-foot relative of Moscorhinus that hunted in European Russia. Studies of its skull suggest it might have delivered venom through specialized ducts while biting, though this remains debated among paleontologists due to the poor preservation of its prey remains. Beyond the therapsids, other predatory groups added to the terrestrial nightmare. The superficially crocodile-like proterosuchids prowled with their slender bodies and enormous needle-like teeth. Found on every continent except Antarctica and North America, these reptiles hunted either fully on land or from the water's edge. Then came the Croniosuchians, another crocodile-like group distinguished by extensive armor along their backs, perhaps evolved specifically to resist attacks from the dominant therapsids. Though typically monitored lizard-sized, some genera like the Urolurpiton could reach dimensions comparable to female American alligators. Even freshwater bodies offered little respite from predation. Primitive amphibians evolved into specialized ambush hunters that preyed on anything venturing too close to the water's edge. Most fearsome were the Rhinsuchidae, a family of tetrapods resembling giant salamanders or crocodilians. The largest, Uranosentrodon, stretched 13 feet from snout to tail tip and lurked in the waterways of South Africa. European Russia countered with the Archaegosauridae, another tetrapod family more slender than the Rhinsuchids but still imposing, with species like Melosaurus reaching 10 feet in length. Amid this gallery of predators, herbivores somehow persisted through evolutionary ingenuity. The Dicynodonts, Captorhaenids, and Parasaurs developed various survival strategies. Lystrosaurus, a pig-sized Dicynodont, became one of the most abundant animals by using powerful forelimbs and tusks to dig deep protective burrows. The Scutosaurids took the opposite approach, evolving into armored tanks with bony scutes embedded in their skin and dense, heavy bones. Scutosaurus itself weighed over 1.2 tons, with spikes adorning its skull and muscles so dense they were essentially impenetrable. If there existed one mercy in this hostile world, it was that the skies remained relatively empty of threats. Unlike the Mesozoic with its flying predators, the late Permian air hosted only modestly sized flyers like the griffin flies, Paleodictyopterans, and the bat-sized gliding reptiles called Wygultosaurids. But what the late Permian lacked in aerial threats, it compensated for with environmental extremes. Surface temperatures averaged 95 degrees, twice today's average, creating vast equatorial deserts where life struggled to exist. The central Pangean Mountains exacerbated these conditions, creating regions prone to severe drought. Yet even this hostile world was merely the prelude to an unimaginable horror. Around 252 million years ago, the eruption of the Siberian Traps, volcanic flows covering an area the size of Western Europe, triggered the late Permian extinction, the Great Dying. This apocalypse raised temperatures to Death Valley extremes year-round, depleted atmospheric oxygen, and damaged the ozone layer, increasing ultraviolet radiation by 5,000% in some areas. When the dust settled, 57% of all biological families and 83% of genera had vanished. The oceans, which had been a relative sanctuary during the age of gorgonopsids, suffered even more severely from acidification and warming. Perhaps this is the true revelation of the late Permian, that extinction is not always sudden. Sometimes it begins with subtle shifts, with predators too perfect, with climates too extreme, with balances too precarious. Sometimes the end doesn't arrive with a celestial impact, but with the slow, inexorable turning of Earth systems towards something no adaptation can overcome. And in those final moments, as the world burned and life retreated, perhaps the only comfort was the warm embrace of those once feared waters, now heated to the temperature of a hot spring, offering one final respite before the great reset of life on Earth.